If you're not happy in your life and you're maybe feeling like there's something missing, perhaps you're living according to someone else's values and not your own. It just so happens that we are going into a Venus retrograde. Venus retrogrades last about 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer this time around. What Venus invites us to do is to review what we value and hold dear to us, which is what this podcast episode is about.
This episode.
This episode. Sorry, I keep saying
I don't know. I think it's kind of one of those things that we review all the time. One of the things that we have disclosed on this podcast is I am not necessarily a big astrological
woo person. Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm skeptical. I am differently minded. Nevertheless, I always respect and take advantage of the opportunities to focus on things like value. I see nothing wrong with that at all. Being aware of your values is incredibly important in virtually all aspects of your life.
Yep.
Relationships, work, everything. If things go against your core values and it's part of your life, then you're making a terrible mistake.
Right. So, yeah. What I have found in the last 3 years since basically the pandemic started is what I really value and what I really want my life to be full of. Have you ever done a values exercise?
I would say no. Okay. Kind of, but no.
Okay. Yeah. Figured. I'm really big on the self-improvement. If you are unfamiliar with who we are, I'm Athena. This is my love, Felix. We created this One Big Caper podcast to talk about all of our capers. We are career performers and entertainers and have some pretty interesting experiences that normal people just don't have. Normal people being people who are not performers and entertainers for a living.
Yeah, I just see it as for us, it's how we live. It's a way of life, and I see that other people live very differently. But we very commonly experience shock and awe when we start telling stories in mixed company.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is that it comes down to what we value, really, with how we live our lives. So the last few years, I've been digging into my values, and I have done the values exercise more than once, and it changes. Like your core values are developed from experiences that you had when you were younger, and they can change, but they usually don't. If you're having an argument with someone, it's because one of your values is being challenged. Bottom line, if you butt heads with anyone, one of your core values is being challenged. And so when I learned that from one of my coaches, I started to see my interactions with my family members and other people that I work with as opportunities to understand my values more and to clarify and set boundaries so that those values wouldn't be challenged. And your values are your values. It's not something that you're taught, and it's not even learned. It's just like a suit you put on. It's a suit. It's a layer you put on yourself that, this is what I value. In our last episode, we talked about travel, and I don't value travel, I think, in the same way other people do. I think people value travel as a means to escape from their everyday life, and I value travel as a means to explore and challenge who you are on the inside.
One of your values?
For me, my main values are self-expression. I used to think it was creativity, but it's actually self-expression, expression of yourself in whatever format you want. Also empowerment. That is huge for me. It's been huge for me. Is to make choices that will empower you rather than disempower you, and to help be inspiring enough to help people find those things. And if you're not happy in your life and you're maybe feeling like there's something missing, perhaps you're living according to someone else's values and not your own, which is something I went through when I went through my dark night of the soul is I realized, oh crap, I'm living my life according to what my parents thought I should be doing, not what I actually value and want in my life. So I think it's a really huge topic. It's not going to be covered completely in
Oh,
one
there's no way we can do that in an
episode,
episode. But
but
it's some of these things are designed as food for thought for you, and certainly an invitation to interact with us, to tell us what you think about some of these subjects. Ask questions, of course. I'm sitting here thinking about values and what I value, and I think it might be more interesting to reveal that I recognize that one of my values, one of the things that I value, has recently changed very much, and in a dramatic way.
I
So
just said values can't change.
I know that's why I thought it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
My tastes, not unlike most people, I suppose, my tastes were formed at a very early age, and then refined over the last
Taste for what?
50 years. Tastes for belongings, aesthetic,
Oh, okay.
even the types of fabrics in my wardrobe,
Okay.
colors, those kinds of tastes.
Okay.
Um,
So how you express yourself?
it's how I express myself, how
like-
how
you
I
like how I did that?
identify. Yes, yeah. But it's changed, because one of the things that for most of my life, if not 80%,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted. Uh, I wanted and have been since I was a child actively building my library. I wanted to study.
He wanted to study like was it like Beauty and the Beast where it's like
Pretty
this
much
massive room with
Victorian,
shelves
not
to the
necessarily,
ceiling?
more like you would picture Robert L. Ripley's office, or
Okay.
so I did want the rolling ladder bookshelf, and
I always wanted one of those.
lots
but
of
why?
wood, Victorian wood uh, treatments, and yeah. So one of the things that I've discovered is that I don't like the burden of those belongings.
Yeah.
And there have been some recent experiences that have informed that change, or that modification to my value. I still love the aesthetic. I still will, have an office that has that. It's just not going to be the.
As extravagant as a full ceiling, floor
I'm
to ceiling.
I'm very willingly
Living.
letting go of my book collection, which is in excess of 1,000 volumes.
It's excessive. I did not understand the extent of the excessiveness until the boxes started coming home to go through.
Yep. So the books are going.
So my question for you is, why did it change? And I'm sure that you're curious why all of a sudden did this. I don't know necessarily that it's a value, but it's like I want to find out what that was tied to, what value is tied to, because it's not tied. It's not a value to keep
It's
a bunch of books.
It's a weight. It's a burden, and I don't think that if I even realized that childhood dream and created that library, that I would have thereby created something of value for people I'm willing at
Okay,
all
so
to.
what is it
So
that you were valuing though that you felt like you had to hoard all those books?
the experience and ownership of this place, this sacred church to the collection, so the experience, you asked me a question, and the experience most recently was part of the rest of the experience. Is difficult to describe. My father passed away in 1998, and I'm still getting rid of things that he left behind. And I recently helped a friend um, liquidate her parents' estate,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a burden. And I don't want to leave that burden to anyone when it's my time to go.
Right. I don't want that burden for sure. Okay, so I understand what it changed because you had an experience or a year's worth of experience where you realized the burden that you could be gifting.
Mm-hmm. Willing a
Cool.
burden.
Yeah, willing the burden. I had a similar thing that I cultivated, curated, created for myself. And it was because I wanted to own real showgirl costumes, if not the actual costumes I used to wear in the show. And so I learned from the costume designer and the head of the feather department how to make these costumes. And I sourced the materials to make the gorgeous body chains that we wore. They're not exact, but they're dang close. Like they are almost, exact, not replicas, because they're not the same designs. They're my designs. And that was important to me. That was something I valued, was to accumulate something to remind me of that experience, to be able to put that on stage, when I was doing burlesque. And since then, that has changed. I don't want that experience anymore. So I think we are talking about values, but
Sure. But changing values.
but changing values, not necessarily changing values. I think values are always evolving, like for sure. Like I said, I used to think my top value was empowerment. Like above all, empowerment was something I valued. But I'm not living my life according to that, because I was doing employee work, which I think is extremely disempowering, especially as a server. It's even more disempowering. So I wasn't like walking the walk, you know. But when I was trying to build the showgirl business, I wanted to shift into coaching women for female empowerment, to help them build their confidence up. And I think it boils down to what you value and recognizing, am I living according to what I actually value? A time like this, a Venus retrograde, is a perfect time to go in and look at your life and be like, okay, well, what are my values? What do I value? And then going through and like looking at your life, like how am I spending my day? How am I spending day to day? Am I doing something that is in alignment with even one of those values? Like I knit every day now. I have to knit every day, unless I'm so tired I can't even see. I did knit a lot yesterday, but that's expressing myself. So I made this top. I love this top. It's super, super comfortable. And I want to make more. I want to make clothes for myself, and people are like, oh, you should be a fashion designer. No, I actually don't want to make clothes for other people. I actually just want to make clothes for myself, because this is how I express myself. And self-expression is one of my top values. And I have 5 or 6, and you generally should get it down to 3 to 5, but get your list down to 3 to 5. And I have a whole exercise that I actually gave my daughter that helped her realize, like, oh, I can't do all the things I want to do. If you're multi-passionate, you can't do all the things you want to do
That's been
unless
the hardest thing for me to reconcile. It's the most difficult thing. The list of things that I want to do is unachievable.
Well, so that's when we get back to what we talked about in the last episode, when you said you had this heated debate on the internet about that kind of experience. To travel outside of the country is unattainable, and it's not actually.
Right.
It's a matter of priorities. What are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing your values? And one of my values is security. So yes, I'm going to prioritize security. So I'm going to work my 9 to 5 or whatever I have to do to make money. And I'm going to make the amount of money that I need to feel secure. But is it possible to cut some things out so that I can start stocking money away for that thing? Right now, to me, my most valuable asset is my time. So I need to set my life up in a way where I have time to knit. I have time to spend with my love, to go on date nights, to do this podcast. I have the time to do that. And that's a matter of prioritizing. For you, if you have this list, maybe tie some of those things to a value and then prioritize it.
That means eliminating some things off the list. But that's, I have to be okay with that.
Right.
I think most often when people say, what are your priorities, they're asking, what are your values?
No,
No?
I still think they're separate.
Okay.
Because I have, like I said, so I have already named 3 of my main values. And I can tell you exactly how I prioritize for those. I prioritize my activities. but I don't always prioritize those values. Okay, self-expression. That's an easy one because I've already been talking about it. I worked in a server job where I needed the money. Like it was, I needed money. And so I had to take that job. So I had to push aside the self-expression because that working for that place required me to wear a uniform. So 80% of my time was spent wearing their t-shirt and black jeans.
Right.
That's not my preferred uniform for life. I prefer to wear things that, express, my tastes in fabrics and uh, style. I wrote down, my ideal lifestyle is where I can work in a place or have a role that I have created as, social media strategist, and I get to wear what I want every day. I get to wear something that I feel expresses who I am and what I, value.
You've just reminded me of it's not really a juicy bit, but it's a fascinating bit of psychology in our family. So one of our young people, and I say ours, I'm the bonus, grown up in their lives, but I count them as mine. Nevertheless, she is an artist at self-expression, and it's one of it's very important to her. I don't know if she's yet identified that it's one of her values,
Yeah, I
but
don't know.
she's an artist at it,
Yeah.
and she aspires to have employment that requires a uniform. She wants to wear a uniform and a name tag.
I don't remember her saying this.
Yep, this is very recently. It came up just I would say a week or less ago. Very very interesting that our most challengingly expressive kids aspires to have at least the experience of a uniform.
Fascinating. I'm trying to picture her. I mean, her sister's already done it.
Yes.
I'm vaguely remembering this conversation. I must have been half asleep or something. Again, this episode, any episode we do, is challenging you to dig into certain things because you have this Venus retrograde, this time period. So it's July 22nd through September 3rd, 2023. This is a time to kind of start digging into, okay, what are my values? What do I value in my life? Do I want to continue living this life the way I want, or do I want to change some things so that I can live according to the values that I have? Will I be happier? Am I happy now? Those are some of the questions you might just ask yourself. I'm just wanting to inspire you. I'm not always happy. Like, we don't always be happy in this life that we've chosen. We value freedom, both of us. We value freedom hardcore. And to me, that's evident in the choices that we've made as far as the jobs that we've taken, the gigs. I tend to move towards performing arts or careers in art or service based. Service is another huge value of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, being a server, it's not the easiest thing. It is absolutely not the easiest job. I could probably think of like three worse jobs than being a server, but being in service of people is hard because some people cross the line and you become the servant to them and they're disrespectful and rude. And so there's some challenges to being of service. But this, even us sharing our viewpoints, to me, is being of service to you, the viewer slash listener, because it's my intention to be inspiring to people to live better lives. You know, that's why I be of service. But there are times when I have to prioritize a value over another, which is lately has been security. We've chosen being performing artists, and performing artists don't make a lot of money. And you never know when your next paycheck is coming. And so you kind of have to stretch it a little bit sometimes. And just like gig workers, they can hustle and push as hard as they can, but their burnout happens to everybody. So there's going to come a time where you're going to have to stop and you're going to have to recuperate.
Mm-hmm.
So
Values is a good discussion, and as you can see, there is plenty to be talked about when values is the prompt, and we are thereby handing off the prompt to you. If you have anything to add to the discussion or any questions for us, by all means, you are welcome and invited to reach us at hello@onebigcaper.com.
comment below. Let's start a
Sure.
discussion about values. Like, Is there something that you value that has made an issue in your life that you're like, dang it, I value this thing, but this is a problem. You know, like we don't own a home. That's sometimes looks to me like a problem. But then I hear of people that had their basement flooded in our recent rainstorms, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that. So values can be changing. They evolve. I think they evolve, but like I said, it's about priorities. So you can prioritize certain values over
I think
others.
it's inevitable, especially in this culture, that aging introduces different values or refined
Oh,
values
living
or
life, you mean?
yeah,
Not
having
aging.
experience. Well, okay,
Living life.
yeah, aging is part of that. But yes, living life and having experience and that kind of thing has a tendency to modify values,
Yes.
and we are experiencing that.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
I drink a lot less. It used to be one of my values to go out and be seen and be at parties and have fun with loads of people all the time, and that is no longer one of my values.
I don't think that's a
You don't think it's value? It was
no.
it was
It's a
it
choice
was
you made
it
based
was
on a
valuable.
value, but I
It
think
was
that
important to me.
the value was to be social.
Possibly. Okay, we can call it that,
Yeah.
but
See, I
um,
think you're
with a
confusing
specific kind of
actions with
no,
values.
no, it was a
No?
specific kind of person and subculture and well, it was the nightlife. It was specifically like those kinds of things that were part of my teenage years.
Yeah, but what were you getting out of it? That's what a value is.
Adventure.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching and listening. We hope that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when the next episode drops. And comment below if you have any comments to add to our values discussion. This is not the last time we will be discussing this because,
Probably not.
yeah, I think values is a big deal in human life. So, thanks for listening.